Hi. Okay, I actually had someone ask me to talk about something other than silent films. Fair enough. They said, well, you're a huge fan of Star Wars. Why can't you talk about that? Fair enough. um, they actually asked me, because it was through messages, and they asked me who my favorite character was. They figured that it was Princess Leia. Yeah. But actually I have two other ones. And actually this last Christmas, this just shows how much my brother knows me. So my brother, um whose name is Luke. This is what annoys me so much, is that so my younger brother's name is Luke, and his friends, when they first meet me, they think that my name is automatically Leia, and nobody changes. I mean, they don't say anything. A lot of the people that have known us long enough, they're like, it's no big deal, and they laugh it off. There was one of my brother's friends who, for about 3 years, thought that my name was Leia. I was like, no, it's not. See, and I thought that my brother had um told him, that the joke had passed, and my brother had told him. No, my brother did not tell him. So he was still convinced that my name was Leia. And so when he said my name, Leia, Leia, I was like, that's not my name. And he said, well, yeah, it is. And we started to get, into this little bit of a fight. And so my brother had to pull him aside and had to explain to him. But anyway, so it's like, but anyway, so this last Christmas, my brother was trying to figure out something to get for me. He ended up getting me like this huge mug. It's more like a soup mug than anything else. I mean, you look at it, and it's not like one of these. I mean, it's like 2 times this size. And yes, I have geeky looking mugs. I have Avengers. I now have 2 Star Wars mugs. I bought a Lone Ranger mug. I have a bunch of Sleeping Beauty mugs because that's my princess one movie. And but yeah, I didn't have any Star Wars mugs. And my brother bought me a Star Wars mug, and it's BB-8, and but this thing is huge, so it's more my soup mug. And I mean, it's big enough and everything, but yeah. But he told me that he was searching everywhere for some kind of Tarkin memorabilia. And he said, "Do you realize how expensive Tarkin anything is?" I was like, I didn't really think about it, no, but I can imagine. And he was telling me just how expensive some of that stuff is, and it was like it's kind of it is jaw dropping, but at the same time, you pretty much figure that, yeah, it is that expensive. Um, the Rogue One CGI, I didn't mind it so much. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, it looked awful. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. But Peter Cushing has been gone since 1994. And you kind of had to have him in there. I mean, what else were you going to do? They showed him in Revenge of the Sith. So you had to have that character there. I mean, what else were you going to do? I can't think of any actor today who could play that part. And even if they had an actor standing there, they were gonna have to use CGI because Peter Cushing had a distinct look in that scene. I mean, in the movie. So, um, there's and I'm sure everyone has seen it. There's this, oh shoot, this web comic, and they bring up the slippers. And I actually saw on YouTube where Peter Cushing himself, it wasn't long after um, the movie was released. He's saying, I don't know what a Grand Moff is. What is that? And he says, I asked George, what is that? and and then this last week I saw Sir Christopher Lee, and he was doing an interview, and he was talking about Peter Cushing and their friendship, and he was asked about Star Wars, and he said, I called him up and I said, what is a Grand Moff? And he says, I don't know, boy, I do not know. And Mom and I always ask, and this was something that I was watching with that interview with Sir Christopher Lee. After his wife Helen died, it pretty much killed him. He loved her so much, and Sir Christopher mentioned, he said he was pretty much just waiting to die to join her. It was killing him to be here. And it's sad, really. It really is. But you do want to see such a brilliant actor, and I read somewhere that he did try to commit suicide like the night that she died. It was just awful. But he just was not the same after her death. But yeah, it's sad. But he hadn't done any movies after she died, and then all of a sudden he does Star Wars, and you kind of wonder, what did George Lucas say to convince him to do it? I mean, he was great for the part, and but but still, after not doing anything, and he did that part, it's kind of like, okay, but you know, so Tarkin was one of my favorites, and honestly, I don't know why. I love the character. I haven't read the book. Now, I asked about the book on my Twitter, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Every time I go to the local library to check it out, it's gone. And I think they have at least three copies of it, 3 or 4 copies of it, and it's always gone. Like, darn it, next time. Kind of like Dr. Claw in the cartoon of Inspector Gadget. Next time. So he's one. And then my other absolute favorite is Boba Fett. Love Boba Fett. I have so much Boba Fett memorabilia. That was another one. On my birthday, those Lego alarm clocks, the Lego men, the Star Wars Lego men. One of them was Boba Fett, and there was like Boba Fett, Darth Vader, and um, Boba Fett, Darth Vader, and a stormtrooper. I think there were only three. And for my birthday, my brother got me Boba Fett. So he's sitting like right across the room here. And I have like a bunch of I need to pull out my all my Star Wars memorabilia anyway one of these days and show you all the stuff that I have. And but yeah, I he's one of my favorites. And I think he's one of my favorites because he's one of the few characters that actually had a side. He was just an assassin that he was just doing his job. And he's just misunderstood. And I loved him in the books too. And that's one thing that really bothers me. Let's talk about this for a minute. So, Disney said that everything that you remember doesn't exist anymore. But then they bring back Admiral Thrawn. I love Admiral Thrawn. I mean, he's like this. He would kill his own mother and just wouldn't even bat an eye. He's one of those characters. He's kind of like Tarkin in a sense. He's just this total badass. And I really, really liked him. I was really upset because they removed Mara Jade. I hope they bring her back. And to be quite honest, they could write her back in as much as I hate saying this, they could bring her back and she doesn't have to have Luke Skywalker. The love story that she had with Luke was absolutely fantastic. The way they met and everything else, because basically it was like this dysfunctional match that should never have happened. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you watch the whole thing happen and you're like, it shouldn't work, but it does, and it's yay. It's like one of those weird relationships that but anyway, so but I hope that they bring her back because she was one of those strong female characters. And but one of my favorite books, and I think I have it. I don't think I got rid of it. I really hope I didn't get rid of it because there was a point where I was getting rid of a lot of things because I had to pay bills. Being responsible was Truce at Bakura, and that book happened. The timeline was it was right like the day after Return of the Jedi. And that book was pretty good. There are some books where it's like I don't really mind that they didn't have like what is that one? The Courtship of Princess Leia. That one's fine. For it to not be part of the you can discard that and it'd be fine. I mean, it was like the guy was just using the characters to use his own it was like he had a problem with women and so he was just using that. I mean, Leia was supposed to be is supposed to be this strong female, kind of like a strong female warrior. And that's not what he was doing with her. all the others, whenever you saw Leia in the books, she was a fighter. Not in this case. It was like it was very disappointing, and to the point of you wanted to scratch the author's eyes out. If you ever go back to the Marvel comics, like from the 70s, before the Empire Strikes Back was released, it's kind of funny to see some of those characters. There's like one where there's like this rabbit looking alien that traveled with Han Solo. I never remember his name. But yeah, he traveled with Han Solo and Chewbacca. And he looks like a rabbit, and he wore red, and and it's kind of funny to look up some of that stuff too, because you see a lot of stuff and you're like, well, wait, did Lucas use this stuff? Did Lucas know about this stuff? I mean, you kind of figured he had to, but there was a lot of things that I don't think Lucas knew was being released. Because he was so busy promoting other things. I mean, there's like I saw a promo for Japan, and he's in it with Peter Mayhew. And it was for a TV. So he was like doing promotions all over the place, and so I'm sure there were a lot of comics and books and stuff that he didn't know half the stuff. But yeah, so um but everyone was so quick to say that all that stuff wasn't canon anymore. And sometimes it's it's like you're walking on eggshells when these people, cuz you mentioned something from like the comics from like the 70s and the books that I read in high school. I graduated in 2000, and you mentioned that stuff, and it's like immediate, well, that's not canon anymore. And it's like I could care less cuz I remember it. you know? Is it canon because Disney said so? There's your timeline and there's mine. It's kind of like the Marvel thing. I was mentioning Age of Ultron screwed up Hawkeye's marriage because in the timeline, in the comic books, he was married to this woman and they screwed up her name. They screwed up her. They didn't have kids. And somebody was telling me, well, that's in this timeline, not this. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What timeline are you? How many timelines are there in Marvel? I thought that the only one that actually had like a timeline that went from here to here to here, and then had this thing that went here, and then blah 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 blah, blah was Legend of Zelda. I mean, seriously, with Legend of Zelda, when you start, it's like, okay, there's the first game and there's a second game, and then it's like you get into the third game and it just goes. I'm lost. And you try to follow it and you need to lay down. It's like, no, there's just no keeping up. And I love talking Marvel. I really do. I love talking about the characters. I love talking about, and I love looking at the old um like the old comic books and comparing. And but there are so many people that are just so fixated on today's universe, you know. There are some that are like, well, Loki only looks like Tom Hiddleston's Loki. And it's like, okay, there was a time when Loki was before he didn't appear in a comic book. He was actually a mythical god. Stan Lee had nothing to do with it. Stan Lee took from the myth. Oh, I had someone really mad at me when I said that. But, like, oh gosh. My friend and I were going through and looking at, he's a huge Tony Stark fan. Iron Man is his Avenger, and of course Hawkeye is mine. Well, um, and then we both like Doctor Strange. And but he was showing me some of the ones from like the late 70s and the early 80s, and there's at one point where Tony Stark got this haircut. It was a mullet. So there's at one point where he had, and I was just like, oh man. And I'm kind of at a loss as to why. Okay, for the most part, all the Avengers used the original costume. Black Widow, she doesn't have the yellow rings around, like the yellow ring belt. Um, which fine. There's probably a reason for that, but and then of course Spider-Man. Um, we don't talk about Daredevil. Of course, I haven't seen the TV show. I'd love to see it. I've heard good reviews for it and I need to see it. But and then Captain America and Iron Man. But Hawkeye, Hawkeye had that blue and purple. And then it had but no, they didn't do that. And I'm kind of wondering why. Did Jeremy Renner say, no, that's not happening. I'm not doing that. Of course, Loki's wasn't really the same either. Neither was Thor's, actually. Thor's was close, but not quite. Well, anyway, I kind of went off track from Star Wars. The comics now don't really. If you look at the comic drawings for illustrations, excuse me, illustrations. If you look at the illustrations for Princess Leia, they were pretty spot on. Of course, I don't know who the illustrator was, but there's at one point, I think it's like around 1980. It's like 79, 1980. And there's one illustrator who makes her eyebrows go all the way up here and down. So she looks like Vampira. And trust me, if you see it, you know what I'm talking about. Because all the other illustrators drew her pretty true to what Carrie Fisher looked like. But that particular one, she looks evil. And you're like, I don't think that particular illustrator did very many of the Star Wars, but yeah. So there's that one, but now, like the Princess Leia comic series, I looked at it, and after growing up on a lot of the Star Wars comics, it doesn't really look like her. I don't know. Oh well. Maybe I'm just too picky. There's a certain type of illustration that I remember, and it's not Leia. But yeah, so Boba Fett and Tarkin are my other favorites. Of course, Leia was always a favorite. And I mean, if you don't know that, we just can't be friends. And see, because I was raised during a time. Uh, I was born in 1982, and then I started school in the late 80s, and there were still like the books, the Ewok books, and everything. So we learned how to read. My generation learned how to read off of those types of books. So like the Ewok Adventures and all those, they were still pretty popular. So Star Wars hasn't really, it didn't really die down all that much. Cause then in like what, 92 is when Super Star Wars came into play. And yeah, I think that was when it was released for NES. Cause and so yeah. Cause a lot of times like with Back to the Future, um Back to the Future was released. It spanned all those years, 1985, and then the last one was released, I believe, in 1990. And then there was long periods of time where it was kind of lost. People knew it was there, and I remember times where it was on TV, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, we'll have the marathon. But there were there were just times where it was just kind of like not there, but now it has a whole new meaning. By about 2005 is when it was like this whole new love for Back to the Future. So, but for Star Wars and even Indiana Jones, that sort of falling into the pits of forgetfulness hasn't happened for those movies. So, but yeah, Star Wars. um, yeah, Boba Fett and Tarkin. I can't think of any characters that I don't like. In the new, gosh, in Force Awakens, I liked Maz. Maz was my favorite. Aside from BB-8, who didn't like BB-8? So there was Maz and BB-8, and then in Rogue One, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah. Now you know a little bit more about my about my love for Star Wars.